Facebook is our future.
In the future, Facebook is expected to take over Airbnb, or at the very least, come up with their own competing service. Facebook's focus on Airbnb will be part of a broader push into the real estate market, but there is a distinction to be made between Facebook's involvement with real estate and that of actual realtors and real estate companies. Facebook won't be trying to compete with actual real estate companies. Very much to the contrary. Instead, they want to focus on the smaller niche markets that have been largely neglected by those very same companies. After extensive research on the subject, Facebook will come to the determination that a large disconnect exists between real estate companies with property listings well out of the economic reach of many Americans and those who need a place to live but can't afford a house, an apartment, or even a room to rent. Compounding the problem further is the notion that somehow one size magically fits all when it comes to real estate. Instead of overpriced real estate listings, Facebook will instead focus their efforts on smaller things like couch surfing. This concept has been around for a while, but it is not widely known or talked about. Facebook will take the couch surfing concept and bring it under their umbrella and give it the publicity it is deserved. A closet rental. To many people, renting out a closet to someone to live in, for someone to live in, may seem like a strange idea, but if you live in a place like, say, Silicon Valley or other places where affordable housing is limited, it can be a blessing. If you've ever seen the size up close of a good walk-in closet, it is more than enough room for one person to sleep in. And, that may all be that is required for some people. Not everyone needs to rent out a room or an apartment. Perhaps they are in a transitional moment in their life and they just need something. 3 or 6 months or so. Renting an apartment is such a pain in the ass. First of all, it's out of the price range of many people. Secondly, you will be locked into a lease for a year. Thirdly, there's no cash allowed, only credit and debit. And fourth, it's constant noise all the time. Garage rental. Facebook virtual classifieds will have a section where you can rent out your garage or basement or shed to woodworkers and other makers. This may seem like a foreign concept to many people listening, but there are actually artists, makers, musicians, and other creative people out there who would love to rent out a small space to work from, but can't afford a 3,000 square foot commercial warehouse. And once again, we find ourselves in a one-size-fits-all situation when talking about real estate in America. And once again, it's Facebook, we find, coming to our rescue. Just as some people don't need an apartment, so too do many people not need, once again, a 3,000 square foot commercial space to create the work they love to do. Maybe at the end of the day, all they really need is just a garage. Because of their very forward-thinking nature, Facebook virtual classifieds will include subcategories within the real estate section, such as RV parking, van life, and everything that entails with that, treehouse rentals, pillow fort listings, micro-dwelling in the tiny homes. And when I say tiny homes, I'm sure many of you have images in your head of homes built on trailers sitting in someone else's backyard. That certainly is an option, but the tiny homes I had in mind are the ones that are 3D printed. This article from Futurism.com entitled A robot can print this $32,000 house in as little as 8 hours. Talks about a Ukrainian-based company called Passive Dom who can 3D print an inexpensive house in an entire 8-hour work shift. Facebook will be including, as well as promoting, such ecological and economical friendly housing alternatives in their virtual classified listings. Now, for those of you living in the city, you're probably thinking, well, what about us? Surely we can't erect one of these printed homes anywhere we want to in the city. I have no hard data to back this up, but I have to assume that population growth has and will continue to increase in urban environments at a level that is disproportionate to the level of the increase of the entire population at large. I would love to see that statistic. I would also love to see a statistic about how many people, as they age, are actually leaving urban environments compared to people, say, 20 or 30 years ago. When you are young, the city is a great place to be. As you age and start a family, the city becomes more and more of an impractical place to live. Not for everyone, obviously, but that is usually the trend that has existed for years. It would be interesting to see how much that trend has reversed itself and how much the population has remained and thus increased over the past decades. With a steady trend of increasing population, cities will have no other choice than to confront this concern sooner rather than later. And while I haven't seen anything definitive on the subject, I did come across this article, which I had bookmarked from Fox News, December 4th, 2017, entitled, "A Fracture-Resistant Cement Could Make Mile-High Skyscrapers Possible." The article talks about how researchers from a university in Germany changed the nanostructure of the properties in concrete and made it more ordered and made it more flexible. This breakthrough, if perfected and adopted, would result in taller, stronger, and safer structures being built in the city. Obviously, taller buildings would be able to accommodate more of the population, but it would also help cut down on urban sprawl so that corporate eating establishments could grow. Okay, I need to get to Airbnb specifically here. I'm kind of running out of time. For the most part, Airbnb experiences are pleasant experiences, and for the very few issues that do arise, they pretty much center around safety and trust issues. With that said, however, I foresee a day in which Airbnb becomes quote-unquote Uberized, meaning that all is well one day and then quite literally overnight everything can turn to shit. Airbnb has flown under the radar for the moment, but it wouldn't surprise me if something happens to where Airbnb begins to, for whatever reason, start to piss off realtors, property management, landlords, HOAs, in highly competitive real estate markets. If that happens, it's possible that a bunch of paid actors and planted saboteurs could be quickly deployed to quote-unquote remedy the situation. One way in which that might be achieved is by planting hidden cameras. This article in the New York Post, December 4th, talks about various cases in which people keep finding cameras hidden in their Airbnbs. Sadly, I believe we are only seeing the beginning of this disturbing trend, and I believe it will escalate to such an extent that Facebook will be in a position to come to the rescue and offer up their own services. What services, you ask? Well, in an earlier section, I mentioned that Facebook will be getting their own home assistant, like an Echo or a Siri. Facebook will call their assistant simply Mark. And To Facebook's credit, their assistant proves to be far superior to that of their competition. The reason why it's superior is because in addition to being able to do all the things that all the other assistants are able to do, it is also able to tap into your personality model, which means it knows your behavior exactly. That is the secret ingredient to its success. Without that, it's just simply another in a long line of home assistants. Let's get back to the main topic of Airbnb, because it is inside these Airbnbs that Facebook's home assistant finds its purpose. As I mentioned, hidden cameras become an escalating problem within these Airbnbs. At the same time this is happening, Facebook's development team was already working on a digital assistant mark. At this point in time, these digital assistants had long since ceased being perceived by the public as merely a, quote, solution in search of a problem, and had found their usefulness in the kitchen of all places. Field reports received from culinary experts far and wide marveled at the ease with which timers could be set, recipes could be repeated, and groceries could be ordered and delivered, all without interrupting their workflow. Facebook homed in on these observations early on and decided to market their assistants for kitchen use. Right about the time that this newfound marketing strategy was to get the go-ahead, someone from the development team caught wind of the hidden camera debacle that was plaguing the Airbnbs and wondered aloud how much of a leap it would be to shift the current marketing strategy away from being exclusively tied to the kitchen to additionally being used for home security as well. In the end, Facebook decides to target Airbnbs and their guests by agreeing, free of charge, with everyone's consent, of course, to outfit all Airbnbs with these multiple assistants in various rooms. The assistants work so well that eventually they attract average consumers' residences. Again, the secret ingredient to the Facebook's assistant is its access to your personality model. It knows you so well. You can mumble something about Domino's deep dish and within 15 minutes end up with a pizza at your front door. No other interaction is required. If you have a history of domestic violence, it can detect the sound of your threats and contact the police if necessary, and it is always accurate. It knows you that well. It can distinguish between vandalism and a home maintenance repair. It is constantly monitoring everything about you and sending reports back to Facebook, where it is then added to your existing personality model. These assistants are tamper-proof. If you open one because you are curious on how it works, a die pack will explode and Facebook will be alerted. Time on this one because I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Of all the websites I've listed here, meetup.com will be the easiest to transition over to the new virtual environment social media platform. I wrote those first few sentences back in November. Well, now it's Valentine's Day, and I'm sitting here reading an article from TechCrunch entitled Facebook Should Be Tinder Too. In this article, they talk about how Facebook has created a Meetups feature. According to this article, Meetups is Facebook's attempt to stimulate meaningful interactions rather than passive content consumption. Some of you might wonder if I predicted the future here. Well, not really. Facebook will indeed have a Meetup feature in the future, and it will be called virtual reality.